Welcome to another segment of the program, and that's the way it was, sponsored by the Plymouth Historical Society, and this is part of a larger program of the state celebration of the Susquehanna Centennial Program. We're being filmed this evening from the museum, the Historical Museum here in the Plymouth Center in Plymouth, Wisconsin. Interviewing tonight will be Julie Sobrani from the Board of Directors from the Historical Society. And our guest on this segment is Mrs. Myrtle Feldmann. Welcome to the show, and that's the way it was.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Okay.
So, Mrs. Feldmann, you've been a longtime resident of Plymouth?
Yes, all my life, just
Right.
outside of Plymouth and in Plymouth, and now again, just outside of Plymouth, in the town of Plymouth.
Okay, you were raised on a dairy farm?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and just off of Highway 67?
Yes,
Okay.
well, just on Highway 67,
On the
just
highway.
south of Plymouth.
Okay, and you went to school in Plymouth?
I went to school, St. John's Parochial
Okay.
Lutheran School,
And the high school?
and the high school.
Okay, tell me about how you got to school.
Well, my father would deliver the milk to the Midwest Creamery. That's where the Creamery restaurant is now. And when he took the milk in, we'd ride along down to school. So that way we didn't have to walk to school.
Otherwise, it would be about, how long of a walk would you say?
I would say it was about 1.75 miles.
And how'd you get home?
Well, on my legs.
And then when the weather was bad, sometimes you...
Oh, then he usually would have sympathy with us, and he'd come after us when the weather was bad.
And you said when it was really bad, there was still school, but you had to take a sled to school.
Yes, we had an old farm sled, a heavy-duty farm sled, and he'd hitch up the team of horses and load the milk up on the farm sled, and away we'd go to town.
And how many were in your family?
We were a family of 4. I had
Okay.
3 brothers and myself.
So he would take you and your siblings.
Yes.
Did you ever bring along friends for the ride? Did you pick anyone else up?
No, our relatives or family or neighbors it just wasn't convenient. We had neighbors that didn't have children.
Okay. So when you were in school, you mentioned to me that there were men and women teachers.
Yes, yes.
But sometimes the women
Yeah.
teachers left.
Yeah, there were more women teachers than men teachers, especially in elementary school.
They lost their teaching jobs.
Yes.
After they got married.
Yeah, well, most of them were single ladies, and they'd room in different homes, but they didn't get married until they were later. I have a cousin, a second cousin from Oklahoma City, and she didn't get married until she was a little over 40 years old because of that ruling at that time that they would fire the ladies if they got married.
And the reason was that
Well, they just felt they weren't getting the full benefit of the teacher's talents.
because of the diversion of being
Yeah.
married.
Yes.
And you remember things about Plymouth, the city, the post office,
Yes.
and the fire station.
Yes, yes. The fire station was where the post office is today.
Okay. And you met your husband, Marvin,
Yes.
in Plymouth.
Well, yeah, it was at a fireman's dance. I went to the fireman's dance, and he was there too. And, earlier that day, he had come to my father's farm to look at a piece of farm equipment because he was building a piece of farm equipment. And, then when I saw him later that evening at the dance, he asked if he could take me home. And that was the beginning.
That was the beginning, and then you later married.
Yes.
Okay.
What kind of car did he have?
What kind of car?
Car? That I don't remember. I'm not.
I bet he remembers.
I bet he remembers too. Probably a Ford.
Okay.
So you married in 1945, and right after the war. Oh, that's the year the war ended.
Yes, that's the year the war ended. The war started in 1941.
And Marvin had been receiving deferments so that he could stay and continue to service farm equipment
Yes.
for the farmers.
Yes, he did. He did that all during the war, and every 6 months he'd get a notice from the draft board about being called into service, and he fully expected to be called into service and be drafted. But he'd fill out his draft notice and send it back, and he'd always get a notice back that he was deferred. And it wasn't until after the war was over that he became aware of the fact that he was getting the deferments because he was making the repairs to the farm equipment. And it was so important at that time that to raise foodstuffs. And they did, the farmers raised the food for the army and for the citizens, and that
Right.
was essential.
Right.
So,
And you remember when D-Day was announced?
yes, what a big celebration.
What happened in Plymouth on D-Day?
Oh, people got a little rambunctious. They were just out for a good time. They were so glad the war was over. It was a difficult time during the war.
Was Mill Street filled up with people?
Oh, filled up with people, and they were hooting and hollering and laughing and giggling, and just everybody was so happy. Yeah.
So you talk about after the war that Marvin continued to develop machinery and how he
Yes.
had to go to the junkyards to get pieces and
Yes,
parts.
yes, he'd go to visit the auto salvage yards and pick up items that he needed, hubs and axles and things, and he'd build farm wagons with those parts because they were only available that way. New parts weren't available.
I think we have a picture of an early farm wagon. That was his beginning in farm equipment
Yes, that
manufacturing.
and after repairing and
After repairing.
And it's called the Plymouth Wagon?
the Plymouth wagon, yes,
The Plymouth Wagon.
Plymouth farm wagon, yes.
And how long was that manufactured?
Oh, he had some salesmen. In fact, he had Bob Schmidt from Glen Beulah. He was a salesman of his at one time, and I don't know just when it stopped. I don't know. He built farm wagons for quite a while, and there was quite a demand because the farmers needed equipment, and the manufacturers couldn't turn it on right away after the war ended.
You said he moved on then to developing the first twine tying hay baling attachment
Yes,
for the farm.
yes.
And that was a big invention.
That was a very important invention. I think it was his most important invention. And that, with that product, it used to take two people to sit in the back in the dust and the dirt and the chaff and feed tines through the machine to wrap around the bale, to secure the bale. And then after his invention with that automatic twine tying attachment, that was just for the Case machine, the J.I. Case company
Okay.
hay baler that they made.
Was that in the late 40s then? Would that have been in the late 40s?
It must have been about that time, yes. And J.I. Case company, they bought that from him. But they manufactured 150,000 of those attachments in the first 2 years.
After they bought it from
After
him.
they bought it, yes.
So at this time, your children are young, but now they're moving into the elementary school age, and
Yes.
you join the company full-time.
Yes,
And you get involved in the business. And at that time, a new product was being developed that was going to be a big name for you,
the Jiffy ice drill, yes. The Jiffy power ice drill, and we now build hand ice drills and different ice fishing accessories as well.
So how did the ice drill evolve? How did that happen?
Well, there was a gentleman here from Plymouth on North Avenue, and he suggested, he was a fellow fireman, and Marvin was in the fire department at that time, and he loved to ice fish. And he asked Marvin if he could build something, a machine, that he could use an engine. He had a Lawson engine from New Holstein. He was a truck driver, and he picked up an engine from Lawson Company, and he tried to make an ice drill using that engine and what he knew about ice fishing equipment, but he couldn't make it work. And he asked Marvin, because he knew Marvin was handy with that sort of thing, if he could try to see what he could do. So Marvin said, sure, he'd try, and he did. And through trial and error and building one and trying another one, and he got it to work. And, well, the gentleman was ecstatic. He was so happy that he had a power drill that he could use. And that was the beginning of the Jiffy ice drill.
For people who don't do ice fishing, the ice can get up to about 26 inches
Yes.
thick, and so you need something.
Yeah, and sometimes even thicker. In really cold weather, we've had ice as thick as 3 feet,
Okay.
Here in the Plymouth
but
area?
not last winter.
Yeah, but here in the Plymouth area?
Yes, at Lake Winnebago,
Okay.
yeah.
When was that ice the Jiffy, what year did that come along?
Oh, well, it started, he had it developed by 1941. That's when
Oh,
we
okay.
started to put it on the market.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But even before the Plymouth wagon?
No, no,
was
after
after
the
that?
Plymouth wagon.
Okay.
After the Plymouth wagon.
Okay.
Yeah. And he manufactured bale elevators and different things. And
So you didn't have to advertise the Jiffy drill right away. It seemed to spread.
well, we didn't have any money to advertise, for
Oh,
one
well.
thing.
That's a good reason. Word of mouth.
Yeah, word of mouth. And we'd go up to lakes, popular ice fishing lakes, and when the fishermen would come off the lake, I'd be standing there and hand them a brochure, and they'd take it, and that was the way they got to know about it. And after a few fishermen started to use it, then by word of mouth, then they'd be pleased with their product, and they'd be happy to show it to other fishermen. They'd even drill their holes for them, and that was wonderful for us. That was a real boon.
And you're still the largest producer.
We're still the world's largest producer of ice drills. We were the first, and we're still the largest.
Oh, that's
Now,
great.
that's located, the plant now is located in the falls.
In the industrial park in Sheboygan Falls, Wisconsin.
Why did you select Sheboygan Falls over Plymouth? Was there a reason that, or were you?
Yeah. There was no building here, and the reason we went to Sheboygan Falls is they had that building. It wasn't the greatest building for manufacturing, but it was a building, and it was about what we could afford at that time.
Okay.
The Feldmans had actually been located, their offices and their manufacturing facility were at 422 East Main.
Yes.
Which is just east of the library. It's a brick home
okay.
with
The
a
big garages.
porch and the big garages in the back. And they were in the rear there for some time before you outgrew
Until
that.
we moved to Sheboygan Falls in 1960.
So that's a unique feature.
So
I think, of
you
it.
really got your start in Plymouth?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we really got our start in Town Ryan. He was first of all in a cheese factory there, and then he moved to Plymouth at 419 East Main Street, the rear, and so then we were there.
So you're traveling, promoting the products eventually,
Yes.
once it's established, going to
Yes.
trade shows.
Yes.
You must have been one of the few women at
Yes,
these trade shows.
at that time, yes. There's many more women involved now in business and so forth, but at that time, but people.
But
they
you
were-
knew the product, so
Yeah.
they had to have been impressed with your knowledge.
Yeah.
You could sell it just as well as any of the male salespeople.
Right, right. There were only a few people that gave me a little grief.
You said that you felt that sometimes they thought women could only operate a sewing machine or a washing machine.
That's,
You showed them.
yeah. At least I tried.
While you were still located in Plymouth, you actually started to manufacture garden tillers?
Yes, we manufactured garden tillers. We manufactured a lot of garden tillers. We were manufactured, in fact, the first 10,000 garden tillers for John Gilson. John Gilson was out of Fredonia, and then they built that big factory south of Plymouth on just off of 57.
Right.
Toro is in there now, and but when the business got so big for them, then they developed it so that they manufactured themselves. So we didn't have that job anymore.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you just started them
Yeah,
out with
we
that
started them
design.
out, yes.
So then you moved to the Brickner Woolen Mills, as Jim mentioned, and we have a picture of the Brickner Woolen Mills building, which has since been converted into very nice apartments.
Oh, yes.
But in your time, you said you moved in and it was in bad shape.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Fire.
There had been some vandalism, and there had young people, I think, that had a little mischief in them. They set some fires in there, and it was kind of smoke blackened and things. The building was not in great shape.
Okay, so you moved in and had to clean it up.
Yes, paint it up, and we also had to put a new roof on.
So it was a building you could afford, but it really had a lot of space.
Yeah.
I know you said you used the floors in different ways, some
Yeah.
for storage and welding and painting
Right.
and such. You talk about installing the new roof.
Yes.
And who helped you install that roof?
Well, Marvin supervised, and then he had people. Kohler Company was on strike at that time, and he hired some Kohler strikers to help him put that roof on. And that worked out great. And it was in January of 1960, and the weather was mild, just like last winter. Maybe not quite as mild as last winter, but it was a mild winter. And they could just continue to proceed with that roof building.
And you were waiting for the roof to go on so you could start to manufacture
Yeah.
your
Go-karts.
Go-karts. I think we have a picture of the go-karts and the young man in the helmet. How did that go for you, the go-karts?
Well, I can't say it went well because we were kind of delayed with the roof and all this and that, and by the time we got that done, the market just kind of disintegrated. But
And they were actually driving the go-karts locally, though? The
oh
people that were
yeah, at the
interested?
karting kettle, they used to have races.
In Elkhart Lake.
Yeah,
Very popular.
yeah, and our children used to participate in the races. Clifford and Ann and Dennis.
They all
Yeah,
drove go-karts.
they all drove go-karts. Made them better drivers when they got to be 16 and got on the highway. I think it made them better drivers.
so?
They had more respect. Yeah, they had more respect to what could happen.
You mentioned the Kohler strike and how difficult it was during that time. Can you tell us a little bit about the tension or what it was like living here during that time?
Well, in Plymouth it wasn't, we didn't really notice too much, but in Sheboygan it was considerably worse. Families were torn apart by it. Some people thought they should continue to work, and other people thought they should strike, and even within families. And it was difficult.
And the farmers, some farmers who went to work there part-time
Yes.
to supplement their incomes were considered strike breakers,
Oh, yeah.
So
They used to call them scabs.
right?
Yeah.
You mentioned some occasions where they put nails in the driveways.
Yes. Shingle nails, and then they'd get that in their tires. And it wasn't pleasant.
Plymouth didn't have to worry too much because of the chief of police.
Yes, Glenn Zimmerman at that time. He was a very firm, very strong person.
They knew they wouldn't get away with it here, I guess.
Yes, I guess so.
When you were in the Brickner building, how many people were you employing?
We also, during that course of time, we manufactured transmissions for washing machines, and that was a subcontract job. We did that for Barton Washing Machine out of West Bend, and they shipped most of them and sold most of them into Mexico. They were a conventional type washing machine, but those and Marvin made many improvements in that transmission too, so they ran quieter and cooler, and it was worked very well.
So approximately how many people were?
Oh, we had over 50 that time.
Right.
Yeah, we had 50, 60 people.
So you were a major employer.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. Didn't think about it at that time. We
Just did it.
Just did it.
That's the way it was.
Yeah, and that's the way it was.
You've developed a lot of products with Feldmann Engineering. The all-terrain vehicles became popular.
Yes, yes.
You have
The Terra Tiger, that was a wonderful vehicle.
the land or water.
Yeah, you could go, on ice, and you could cut a big hole in the ice and plunge in there with that vehicle. And it had soft tires, low-pressure tires, and it could crawl out back on the ice again. There was no other vehicle that could do that.
Wow.
So that was good. It was all enclosed. You didn't get wet in there. But it was a process to try to get a source for those low-pressure tires.
Now, what did this cost? If I was
That
if I had to buy one,
cost about $1,095, if I remember correctly, at that time.
Right.
Now they're
In the
$7,000, $8,000 or more.
In the 60s.
Yeah.
And you sold it.
We sold that to Jacob. No, who did we
Alice
sell?
Chalmers?
Alice Chalmers. Yes, that's who we sold it to. Alice Chalmers.
And that had 6 wheels.
Yeah, and they built a plant in Carolina, north or south, in Lexington, whether that's in North Carolina or South Carolina. And but it took them so long to get going with it that the market again kind of drifted away. So they built quite a few of them, but not anywhere near what they might have built if they had gotten right into it right away.
So then you went to the three-wheeler, and the competition got you at that point.
Oh, yes, yes, the Mini Brute. That was a three-wheeled all-terrain cycle. And that was, yeah, we were at a show in Minneapolis. And then we were showing it, and we were getting very good reception. And then all of a sudden, there was a whole lot of people that came in. And later we learned that Honda brought in an airplane load of their engineers to look at our product. And well, they went home and they built their Honda unit and blew us out of the water. So we weren't in business on three-wheeled vehicles very long.
So you brought your company a very long way, and had obviously built up a very excellent reputation for yourself.
Yes,
As a businesswoman, and you were asked to serve on the Lakeshore Technical College board.
yes,
I think we have a photo of that. You were the first woman appointed to this board.
yes, I was the first woman.
Tell me about some of your responsibilities on that board.
Well, we'd have meetings monthly, and then we'd be on committees as well, and then each committee had a monthly meeting, and well, we'd talk with the district director and
And that was about 10
learn
years.
yes.
10
It
years.
was a learning experience for me. It was wonderful, and it was very good, and I highly recommend people become more active in the Lakeshore Technical College and participate as best they can.
How were you received as the first woman as being on the board?
No problem. No problem.
Received.
Yeah.
No reluctance to...
No, not really.
Yeah.
Not really. I can't say that there was. They voted me in as a chairperson
Okay.
after a few years, so I took that as a vote of confidence.
Sure. Right.
During that time, you were also voted as a Sheboygan County Small Business Person
Yes, yes.
by First Star Bank
Well, it wasn't known as First Star then, but that's what it is today,
this week.
This week.
this week.
So you really prized that honor.
Oh,
That
yeah,
was a big
I
deal
really
for
did.
you.
Yeah, that
So
was
you must
great.
have featured some press throughout the county for receiving that award, and
Yeah, yes, it was very nice.
that's great.
Yeah.
You know, you have traveled very extensively for your business.
Oh, yes.
All over the world.
Yeah, well,
You were in
some
Moscow?
over the world for our business, yes. We went to Moscow here not too long ago, about 3 years ago. But we traveled Canada. Canada was a good customer. And the United States and the northern areas. You know, with the ice drill, you can only sell where there's ice.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a Canadian firm that owns a farm implement dealership. Is it in Keogh or Chilton or someplace that makes manure spreaders? Or isn't that a Canadian firm today?
I don't know. I really can't say that I know who that is.
Well, I'm impression that it was.
Yeah.
But they're sold internationally, so
Oh, yeah.
Where
We-
there's
We've
ice,
sold in
you
Finland
manufacture.
and Sweden and well, you have to get in the northern areas. I think there'd be tremendous market in Russia if they could get their economy together so they'd have money. But can't sell them if they don't have money.
that's true. One of the interesting things that you mentioned at the beginning of the ice drill conversation was that ice fishermen in the 50s were out to catch fish to eat.
Oh, yes, yes,
Just as much a need as a sport.
yes, yes.
Okay, this will be wrapping up the segment of this program, which
Oh,
is called And That's
huh?
the Way It Was.
Yes.
And we're going to thank you, Myrtle Feldmann, for being our guest on this segment.
I was very happy to do it. Thank
Thank
you
you, really.
for
Thank
inviting
Thank you,
me.
Mrs. Feldman.
Thank you, Julie, for doing the interviewing. And you can watch other segments of this show. That's the way it was. Calling the TV3 station or watching for the schedule in the Plymouth Review. Please stay tuned for another segment of the program, And That's the Way It Was.